Hey, church family, so excited to be here today in a little bit of a different setting. Today's what we're calling our Sabbath Sunday, and so we wanted to prepare a little bit of a different kind of devotional way to bring you some content today as we get into kind of this new year. So we're really excited to share that with you today. I'm joined by Chris Haug, who's our Academy Director. As well as Wesley, our Operations Pastor. My name's Caleb, and again, just such a joy to be with you guys. This year was a really great year. And really, we will have you guys to thank for that. We saw some incredible wins and so many cool things throughout the year. I mean, things like being able to support with the Ukraine Relief Fund, raising $100,000 for CAPS. We've seen 918 people since we launched give their lives to Jesus.
Come on, man.
That's radical. So just incredible wins that really you've been such a huge part of. And so really, from the bottom of our heart, on behalf of all of our entire staff, we just want to say thank you for being part of our family, for being a huge part of that. We really can't wait to see what God is going to do next year. We really have the hope and the belief that 2023, in many ways, is going to be our best year yet. You know, Wes is going to be back, by the way, January 15th. We're starting a brand new series. I know that he's so fired up to share a word that God has given him about the vision for our church in this next year. So you're not going to want to miss that. Make sure you mark your calendars for it. But today we've got a cool topic. We're going to talk a little bit about what we saw this year, what we learned, some of the wins, also some of the losses. And I'll start by just asking you guys that. What are some of the big things that stand out to you from this year? Maybe I'll start with you, Chris. What are some of the big wins that you experienced this year?
Yeah, it's interesting because you go into this role thinking, these are going to be my wins. It's going to be my hero story. I'm going to accomplish this, dominate this. And God completely just redefines what those wins are. It's wild to think like this month, last year, I wasn't even here. How much has changed in 1 year, from launching VBS to changing kids ministry a little bit to launching a new ministry through the Academy. I think the craziest thing for me is just seeing the community that our families have found organically. It's only something God could do. A place that kids feel safe, where families are finding friendship, genuine community of wanting to do life together. That was always our tagline, raising warriors in Christ together. And you say that and you hope that, but to see it in the first half of the year of those programs is radical to see. And you know it's something that you couldn't actually do. You're just a part of it. I think that that's where God showed me the biggest win, is that I just get to be a part of doing life together with families in Christ.
It's cool, man.
Which is really nothing better.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what happens when you just say yes to what God puts right in front of you. You know, sometimes that doesn't look maybe what you thought that it would look like, but when he shows up and really like breathes life into it, it's a totally different thing. Yeah. Like, we have plans of what we think is going to happen, and then God comes in and totally blows that out of the water. So very cool thing to see. What about you, Wesley? What do you think are some of the wins or some of the things that stand out to you as you look at the last year?
Yeah, man, I'm fired up. I wish I could share a ton, but when I really think back on the year, it's really, what did God do? And the biggest one to me is just how we've been able to serve people. I mean, we went from 3 to 4 to 5 services. So many different ministries have launched and come together. We got men's and women's and inner healing and community groups, and just all the stuff that the Lord has given us vision for and we've taken ground on has been so cool.
Our staff has gotten to grow a lot, and I think in that way, like, our family as a church at large has gotten to grow a lot. And so, we've seen, so much, but I think the way that the community just continuously comes together, I mean, man, we could go on and on. All the amazing things that we've heard from, like, women's ministry and the Bloom huddles and all of that incredible stuff, men's ministry, the Academy, kids. I mean, there's just been so much that's all kind of centered around this idea of family. I think it's interesting for us, though, because we kind of have an interesting seat in the whole thing, right? As leaders of the ministry, of different ministries, we get to see things from a different perspective, and I know that while it's true that there are a ton of wins, we like to be honest around here. We like to, tell the truth. There's also probably been a lot of failures from us as individuals as it relates to, our leadership or even our own personal lives. It's cool to reflect on the good things, but I think one of the things that I love about God is that he's constantly searching for the ways that he can redeem even the failures or even the things that seem ordinary. And I know that the three of us have probably experienced that this year, again, having gone through a lot. So that's really what we want to talk about today for kind of the meat of our time together, is like, what are some of these failures, to just be totally real, that we've experienced, maybe things, again, in life and leadership that we haven't done super well, and how is God redeeming that, and how is God using that to kind of launch into the next year? So I'm gonna put you on the spot, Chris.
Yeah, let's go.
If you want to start, but yeah, would love to hear about maybe.
Now?
Would maybe love to hear about an experience, from you from this last year that was maybe challenging, but again that God wanted to use and redeem.
Yeah, I got plenty. No, I think it's crazy because coming from like a secular profession and now working at a church, never thought I would do. You almost realize over time these lies that you buy into as a person and as a professional of how you identify yourself, where you find your worth. And you don't even realize it's there when you're in a world that's defining you by numbers, by performance, by achievement, by accomplishments. That's how you're defined. You go to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And every day you're defined by what you're doing, right? Every single day without an emphasis on God. Yeah. And we're so fortunate now to be able to have that emphasis on God all the time and push each other in that. But, I was in that profession for about 12 years. And so to come here, I didn't realize how distorted, I guess, my view and my identity and worth of myself was and where I got that worth until I came here. And I was almost like in this desert season when we were launching the academy, nothing existed. I was just in this moment of, in my head, I had this hero story of how this was going to work out, right? Like we all create like our own vision of like, it's going to be like this. It's going to save the world. I'll be there, and you have like this hero story. And usually in your head as kind of an achiever and somebody who's just been fed this lie of like your accomplishments define you, you're the hero of the story, right? And so when I was in that desert season of not having anything tangible to really hold on to, like not a kid on campus, nothing existed yet, not a desk here. It was a pretty dry season of realizing like, what's going on? It was supposed to happen this way, right, God? I got to realize my worth was not in my accomplishments or my achievement or the things that I was doing, and that the victory's already won. Sometimes I'm like, I have to produce the next victory for there to be victory, or for me to be a hero, or for people to find worth, or to even like me. I know that's a crazy thing to say, but I got to have almost that peace and transformation of understanding that, one, I'm not the hero, which was really comforting, right? I don't have to carry those superhero expectations. And two, the victory's won, the battle's won for us, and I could rest in peace in that. So super transformative, almost of my own identity. And I think I didn't know it until I got here. I thought I had a super healthy view of myself. True, and I think in many ways I did. I think it's super healthy to set great goals. But I think if you're not aligned to what God's plan is, you're just swimming upstream. You're swimming upstream trying to be this hero in a story that you're actually not even the hero. And I think the moment we're talking about I or me doing, that's almost where we're kind of losing a little bit. So that was kind of a big transformation for me where I didn't realize how lost that identity and worth was until I got here and God humbled me and kind of brought me through that desert a little bit and kind of transformed that mindset.
Yeah. It's weird because sometimes, God's voice is clear, but sometimes it's easier to hear the other voices.
Oh, totally.
They're just like
that lie.
bombarding you over and over and over again. And meanwhile, God's voice is like constant. Yeah. And he's not trying to like shout, and he allows us to grow, the room to do that. So yeah, definitely, I know that I resonate that a lot too. And I think that for me, that's a lot of where my struggle has been this year for sure. And some of my, failures in life and leadership really was just the inability, or maybe not even the inability, but like the choice, I think, if I'm being truly honest, to just not practice good rest. I think that was a huge failure for me. I think part of what you said, working hard is in many ways glorified. Yeah. We know that it's a good thing, but I think glorified kind of takes it to that next place of like, it's now absorbing a place where it doesn't belong, and I think that, man, there were times this year where I was like, so arrogant as to say like, man, I don't really need to rest. Like I'm totally fine, and it was funny. A few weeks ago, Katie, who works with me in the office, she like sent me a voice memo and she's like, I just want you to know that you've been kind of weird. Like, you're not the same.
Yeah, you are.
And I mean, to tell you that too, man.
Yeah, thanks. At least Katie did tell me, and I like started to think about it. It took me like a week to process, and it was kind of fun. It was super ironic because like we were doing a man night and I was like giving a Devo on rest. And it was literally that night that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me.
Practice what you preach.
Like I haven't done it. And there was really like this like pride of like, I didn't really take a vacation this year. There's like this pride in like doing it
for sure
and working hard. And there's this like belief that like, man, if I can control everything, if I can, do it all myself, that's the only way that it goes as far as it needs to go.
Yeah.
And God's like, no, like I promise if you just let it go, this thing is going to go farther.
For sure. But
I don't know about you guys. Is that ever hard to believe for you guys?
I totally feel that, man. It's just like, I don't need vacation. I got this. I got it. Look at me. And it's not always like that. I mean, we're serving the Lord. We're doing the best we can, but I totally relate to that, man. And it's hard. It's hard to find a practice of rest. For sure.
And I also feel like sometimes we can almost believe that lie if it's all up to me. Like it's all on my shoulders. I'm the only one that's going to keep it at that bar. I could definitely relate to that this last year. I know we've talked about it a lot of like, it's up to me. If I'm not here, this fails. I think that's a lie that Satan wants us to buy into.
Yeah. And I think part of where it gets like kind of tricky is like, we know that hard work honors the Lord.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he has blessed us with life and the ability to do work, with jobs, all of that sort of stuff. So we know that hard work does honor the Lord. But rest is also a commandment.
Yeah, it's the balance.
And so rest also honors the Lord because that's where you practice faith. Kind of like what you were saying. It's the faith to say, okay, I am going to let go because you call me to this. You call me to rest. You call me to have times of refreshment, and that actually will help everything else. And so I think that both of those things honor the Lord, but we kind of, often only see it one way. So that's definitely been kind of a huge thing for me, and definitely one way that, I want to be able to help lead, the people on my team better. I want to be able to lead my family better that way. And the only way that happens is with rest.
Yeah. What do you mean by rest? What does that look like to you? Maybe more importantly, what does that not look like?
Rest for me probably is twofold. I think that there's, the regular rhythms of spending time with the Lord. I think it's acknowledging that he is the source, that he is what, kind of breathes life and energy and motivation and all of that. I will say that probably should look different for everybody. Maybe you're like a morning person, right? I'm not a morning person. And so there's people that talk about like doing their devotional first thing in the morning. Like that's painful to me to wake up early in the morning, but you can still have that same regular rhythm of rest if you take a walk on your lunch or, at night spending time with the Lord. But I think that that's one like super key ingredient is having a regular time that you go to the Lord to have him fill you in ways that only he can. But the second part of it is to like really press into the things that you enjoy. God has made us all in unique and different ways. It doesn't have to look a specific way, but what I do think it has to be is it has to be intentional. I think that it's one thing to like, you have a long day at work and you come down and you sit down in front of the couch and you kind of zone out for a couple hours. It's a totally different thing where if you're like, man, I really enjoy Thursday night football. So on the way home, I pick up my favorite dinner and I watch the game with my kids. Yeah. Two practices that are basically exactly the same, but I think what they yield is totally different. And I think the difference there is the ingredient of intentionality. Yeah. All right, so Wesley, you're up, man. What do you feel like you have learned? What do you feel like God is teaching you through, again, maybe some of the challenging things throughout this year?
Yeah, man. Looking back at this year, I'm just super grateful for a ton of it. This has been a very stretching year for me. Just becoming a pastor, taking all those classes, getting prepared, stepping into more leadership with people. And so when I look back, it's kind of a combination of a few things. I would say rest is one of them, but also thanksgiving and prayer. And so for me, I'll unpack that in a little bit. But for me, because ministry is somewhat new, I think that all the work we do here is doing it for the Lord. Whether someone reaches out for a prayer request and you go to scripture to find some answers and pray through that and then spend time with them, or you're doing something for ministry looking for an answer, I think that I've lost a little bit of my personal relationship with him. And that's hard to say as a pastor. It's like, wow, when I look back, I'm like, I think I'm always doing work for the Lord. And he's just asking me to meet him right where we're at right now. And he's like, I miss you. I want to meet with you. I want you to give me prayer and thanksgiving, and I want to give you rest. And I think I've just missed some of that. And that's not to say that I'm like somewhere off in the woods, never praying and never, being grateful or having moments like that. I mean, I have a firsthand seat to see all the amazing thing God's doing here. But when I try to unpack that, I think Psalm 100 hit me really hard. And some of it says this: It says, know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We're his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, and then enter his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise to his name. That's just so good, man. It's just like, he just wants your thanksgiving. He wants you to enter into his presence. And just because all the stuff we do, I've just gotten lost in my intimate time with him. And this is the convicting verse. I want to share this one too. This is Romans 1:21. For although they knew God, they never glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. And I'm not saying I have not given thanks to God and seen that, but it's crazy to just listen to that verse and hear they knew God. They knew everything about him. He was studied. They knew exactly what he was, but they didn't even give thanks, and they didn't know, the interaction that he really wanted from them. And so for me, looking back on a failure, I would definitely say it's something I want to work on, is just being able to have that restful, thankful, and prayerful time with him where I just have a consistent, open conversation. I think that's what Jesus is ministering the most. I heard it said from a pastor, just like, what does it look like when, you have a deep relationship or a friendship with maybe your wife or a really good friend from a long time? It's those phone calls where you kind of can just be on the phone and you might not even need to say anything because it's just comfortable and it's just, they're an open ear for you. Sometimes for me, that's just on my drive with my wife on the way home, or you, bro, on the way home. It's just like, I don't even need to say anything. Yeah. And we're just kind of sitting there and like, if I have a thought, here it comes. And so like, what does it look like to just have a relationship where you're just with the Lord all the time? You're just like, hey, Lord, I got this on my mind, or like, I need to give you this. And so like, what does that look like coming in 2023 for anyone? I would say encourage them to, is just like, what does that look like to just have the Lord right there all the time? Because just like a father, like that's what he wants from us.
That's totally true. Like there's something so comforting about like constantly being in that relationship, constantly being in that presence. And the other thing that it made me think was that oftentimes when we are encountered with some sort of failure or something that we did wrong, I think it's very easy to allow it to let us spiral into like a worse version of that.
Yeah.
Right. We feel either not worthy or guilty, and then like we're not able to get back to that. And I think that over and over again, like God is not the God that's holding that against you. Like he has desires for you. Yeah. He wants to spend time with you. And at the end of the day, it's for our benefit, but we go to him and he's not like, man, you haven't called in a week.
You blew it,
like
man.
That sucks. He wants to spend that time, but at the same time, if we fail, if we mess up, if we don't do that, he's still equally ready and equally eager to meet us there when we go back.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing to remember. Because it can be discouraging. I know that I've done that before, where I've been in kind of like this holding pattern of like, dang, I didn't do so well. And so like, it's hard to kind of like go again, because I think normally in our lives, we're not met with that same sort of reception. If I fail you in a sort of way, or, like it's hard for us as human beings to just always have open arms. And so I think that sometimes we like project that on God, where that's not real. Like he's waiting for us to spend time with him.
Thank goodness, right? It's also so interesting how challenging that intentionality piece is. The intentionality piece of being alone with the Father, of seeking rest, just all of that takes so much intentional practice. It's
you had a legit experience with that, like your day of solitude this year, right? What was that
another
like?
one. I'm doing another one this week. And that's what I think that was really eye-opening to me. Same thing as you, Wesley. I think we just get caught up so much in the busyness, the tasks, but not actually sitting and looking at the Father and just being still. Like I think the aha for me was being still and just listening and just pausing. Like how often do we do that?
Yeah.
We're in so much chaos, so much noise, and we create a lot of that. And we're just constantly trying to do. But how often do we just sit, be still, and listen? There's always so much going on around us. So that was a big takeaway I had, is just to create that space more often. But it takes so much intentionality, from your spouse, from your family, even from you, to just define those moments and actually pursue them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good place to break for our time together. I appreciate you guys being open and sharing, again, some of the things that we have experienced. I think there's a lot of hope in that, again, because we have a God that walks with us, that he cares for us, he cares about us. And we can fail with the confidence that he's still there and he's right there. And I hope that, I hope, church, that you guys are encouraged in that way as well. I think that a lot of times as we get into the new year, it's easy to look at what we want to accomplish, but oftentimes we also look at what I didn't accomplish in this last year, you know? And so again, church, I hope that you're encouraged that God is still there. He's still with you. He doesn't hold things against you. He forgives us. He renews his grace to us each and every day. And I hope that you can really find some time to be encouraged in that, and really lean into that thought that we have a God that loves us. He cares for us, and he wants to be there with us. So thank you guys again, Chris and
fun,
Wesley,
man. Super fun.
for hanging out. Church, we're going to have some devotional questions. We'll prepare a weekly game plan like we always do. You can find it in the description of this video as well as in the weekly emails that go out. Just some ways to engage with some of the principles, some of the lessons that we learn in this video. And again, as we always say about the weekly game plan, just find a way to apply them to our lives each and every day. So we will have that prepared for you. Again, use the link in the description box below. Couple quick announcements before we go is that, again, we're back with our brand new Vision series on January 15th. It's called Consecrate Yourself. Again, I know that Wes is so fired up to be sharing the new vision that God has given him for us as a family, so we can't wait for that. January 8th, the week before that, we are back here for a praise party. Yes. So it's going to be a lot of fun to have an extended time of worship and really kicking off the year the best way that we can by just devoting time for communion with the Father, like you were saying. So we want to invite you to both of those things. Hopefully you can be a part of that. Again, so blessed to spend this time with you. We really hope that you're enjoying your Sabbath Sundays and times with friends or times with family or those closest to you. We can't wait to see you on January 8th.